Imagine being born into the richest kingdom on earth, a land where colossal pyramids pierce the sky, where the mighty Nile breathed life into the desert, where temples glittered with gold, and generations of pharaohs had ruled for thousands of years. But behind the magnificent palaces of Alexandria, another world existed, a world built on fear, betrayal, and ambition. This was the Egypt into which Cleopatra, the seventh Philopator, was born in 69 BC. She would become one of history's most famous women, not merely because of her beauty, not simply because of her romances, but because she stood at the crossroads of two civilizations. Her choices would decide the fate of an empire, and with her death, an age that had lasted nearly 3,000 years would finally come to an end. To understand Cleopatra, we first need to understand the family she was born into. Surprisingly, Cleopatra was not ethnically Egyptian. She belonged to the Ptolemaic Dynasty, a royal family of Macedonian Greek origin. Their story began more than 2 centuries earlier with Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals. When Alexander died in 323 BC without a clear heir, his vast empire fractured almost overnight. His generals divided the conquered world among themselves. Ptolemy claimed Egypt. Instead of ruling as a foreign conqueror, he declared himself pharaoh. His descendants would continue ruling Egypt for nearly 300 years. They embraced Egyptian royal traditions when it suited their power, presenting themselves as living gods to their subjects. Yet inside their own palaces, they spoke Greek, preserved Greek customs, and fiercely guarded their bloodline. To maintain what they believed was the purity of the royal family, brothers frequently married sisters. The result was not unity, it was endless rivalry. Within the Ptolemaic court, family was often more dangerous than any foreign enemy. Brothers plotted against brothers, sisters poisoned sisters, parents feared their own children. Assassination was not an exception. It was almost expected. This was the political world Cleopatra inherited, a kingdom where surviving childhood was only the beginning. Unlike many royal children, Cleopatra received an exceptional education. She studied philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history, diplomacy, literature, and rhetoric, the art of persuasive speech. Ancient writers describe her as remarkably intelligent. The Greek historian Plutarch, writing more than a century after her death, famously suggested that it was not extraordinary beauty alone that captivated those around her, but rather her conversation, intelligence, and charisma. She possessed something far more powerful than appearance. She knew how to persuade, how to negotiate, how to read people, how to make allies. Perhaps most remarkably, Cleopatra is believed to have been the first ruler of her dynasty to learn the Egyptian language. Most previous Ptolemaic kings had governed Egypt without speaking the language of the majority of their own subjects. Cleopatra chose differently. She reportedly spoke several languages, allowing her to communicate directly with diplomats and foreign visitors without relying entirely on interpreters. Whether the ancient reports exaggerate the exact number of languages remains uncertain, but historians widely agree that her linguistic abilities were exceptional. Even as a young princess, Cleopatra understood an important lesson. Power was not won by force alone. It belonged to those who could influence people. Yet while Cleopatra was mastering diplomacy, Egypt itself was becoming increasingly fragile. The kingdom remained enormously wealthy. The annual flooding of the Nile produced abundant harvests. Alexandria had become one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. Its famous library attracted scholars from across the Mediterranean. Its lighthouse stood among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Ships carrying grain, papyrus, glass, spices, and luxury goods crowded its bustling harbor. Whoever controlled Egypt controlled one of the richest economies of antiquity. But prosperity concealed weakness. The Roman Republic was rising rapidly. Every decade, Rome's influence expanded farther across the Mediterranean. Smaller kingdoms increasingly depended upon Roman protection or Roman approval to survive. Egypt was no exception. Its rulers borrowed heavily from Roman financiers. Roman politicians increasingly involved themselves in Egyptian affairs. Although Egypt remained officially independent, its future was becoming tied to the ambitions of powerful men in Rome. Cleopatra would soon discover that surviving as queen meant understanding Roman politics as much as Egyptian traditions.
In 51 BC, everything changed. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, died. According to his will, 18-year-old Cleopatra was to rule alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was only around 10 years old. Following Ptolemaic custom, the two siblings were also expected to marry. It was intended to preserve dynastic tradition. But shared crowns rarely produce shared power. Almost immediately, tensions erupted within the royal court. Cleopatra showed little interest in becoming a ceremonial queen controlled by court officials. She issued decrees in her own name. She appeared independently before her subjects. She acted like a sovereign. This alarmed the powerful advisors surrounding the young king. Chief among them were the eunuch Pothinus, the general Achillas, and the teacher Theodotus. Together, they sought to rule through the child king while pushing Cleopatra aside. The political struggle soon became open conflict. By 49 BC, Cleopatra found herself forced to flee Egypt. The queen had become in exile. She crossed into the eastern frontier, gathering loyal supporters and assembling an army. Many rulers would have accepted defeat. Many would have disappeared into history. Cleopatra refused. She waited patiently, watching, planning, searching for the perfect opportunity to reclaim everything she had lost. She did not yet know it, but destiny was already sailing toward Egypt. Across the Mediterranean, Rome itself had erupted into civil war. Two of the greatest men in Roman history were about to collide. One was Pompey the Great, the other was Julius Caesar. Their struggle would soon reach the shores of Alexandria and forever change Cleopatra's life. As Cleopatra waited in exile, events beyond Egypt's borders suddenly shifted in her favor. Across the Roman world, civil war was raging. Julius Caesar had defeated his longtime rival, Pompey the Great, who fled across the Mediterranean seeking refuge. Believing they could earn Caesar's gratitude, advisors to the young king Ptolemy XIII made a fatal decision. The moment Pompey landed on Egyptian shores in 48 BC, he was murdered. His severed head was presented to Caesar as a gift. But the plan backfired. Caesar was not pleased. Whatever their rivalry, Pompey had once been Rome's greatest general and Caesar's own son-in-law. Instead of rewarding the Egyptian court, Caesar was disgusted. He remained in Alexandria, determined to settle the growing dispute over Egypt's throne. For Cleopatra, this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. She knew that marching into Alexandria with an army would almost certainly lead to her death. Instead, she chose something far more daring. According to the ancient historian Plutarch, Cleopatra secretly entered the royal palace hidden inside a bundle of bedding, often retold in later centuries as a rolled carpet. Carried through the palace by her loyal servant Apollodorus, the bundle was delivered directly into Caesar's chambers. When it was unwrapped, the exiled queen stood before the most powerful man in Rome. Whether it was a carpet, a linen sack, or wrapped bedding, historians agree on the important point. Cleopatra risked everything on one bold personal meeting. It was one of history's greatest political gambles. Caesar quickly recognized what many others had underestimated. This young queen possessed remarkable intelligence, confidence, and political instinct. She argued that her father's will, recognized by Rome, made her the rightful ruler alongside her brother. Caesar agreed to hear her claim. The decision enraged Ptolemy XIII and his advisors. Alexandria soon erupted into violence. The streets became battlefields. The royal palace was surrounded. Roman soldiers fought desperately against Egyptian forces in what became known as the Alexandrian War. During the fighting, part of Alexandria's harbor district caught fire. Ancient writers later connected this fire with damage to the famous Library of Alexandria, although historians still debate how much of the library was actually destroyed during Caesar's campaign. Months of conflict finally came to an end when Ptolemy XIII attempted to escape across the Nile. His boat capsized. The young king drowned. With her rival gone, Cleopatra reclaimed the throne of Egypt. Following dynastic tradition, she was formally married to another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. But unlike before, the real authority now rested firmly in her own hands. For the first time, Cleopatra was not simply a queen in name. She was the undisputed ruler of Egypt. Soon afterward, she gave birth to a son known as Ptolemy XV, better remembered by history as Caesarion. Cleopatra believed the child represented more than the future of her family. He symbolized the possibility of uniting the wealth of Egypt with the immense power of Rome. For a moment, it seemed her greatest ambitions were within reach. But across the sea, Rome's politics were once again turning deadly. The man who had restored Cleopatra to her throne was about to walk into the Roman Senate, and history was preparing another betrayal.
In 44 BC, tragedy struck without warning. On the Ides of March, Julius Caesar was assassinated inside the Roman Senate by a group of conspirators who believed they were saving the Republic. With a single act of violence, Cleopatra lost her greatest ally. Realizing that Rome had become too dangerous, she quietly left the city and returned to Egypt with her young son, Caesarion. Soon afterward, her co-ruler and younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, disappeared from history. Many historians believe he was likely poisoned, although no ancient source proves this beyond doubt. Cleopatra then declared Caesarion her co-ruler, securing the succession of her own bloodline. But Rome was once again descending into civil war. Three powerful men emerged to avenge Caesar's death: Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir; Mark Antony, his most trusted general; and Lepidus. Together they formed the Second Triumvirate and divided the Roman world among themselves. In 41 BC, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in the city of Tarsus. She understood that first impressions could shape the future of kingdoms. According to ancient accounts, Cleopatra sailed up the Cydnus River aboard a magnificent royal barge adorned with purple sails and gilded decorations. The spectacle was carefully designed, not merely to impress Antony, but to demonstrate the wealth, prestige, and independence of Egypt. The meeting changed both their lives. Their political alliance soon became a personal relationship. Together they had 3 children and built a powerful Eastern empire stretching across Egypt and much of the Eastern Mediterranean. Antony granted Cleopatra additional territories, strengthening her influence as she pursued her dream of restoring Egypt's greatness. But in Rome, Octavian transformed their alliance into a weapon. He portrayed Antony as a Roman hero corrupted by an ambitious foreign queen. Through speeches, propaganda, and public opinion, Octavian convinced many Romans that Antony had abandoned Rome for Cleopatra. The conflict became inevitable. In 31 BC, their combined fleets met Octavian's forces at the Battle of Actium, off the western coast of Greece. It became one of the most decisive naval battles in ancient history. Antony and Cleopatra were defeated. They retreated to Egypt, but the war was already lost. The following year, Octavian invaded Alexandria. As defeat closed in, confusion and despair spread through the palace. Antony was falsely informed that Cleopatra had taken her own life. Overcome with grief, he fell upon his own sword. Mortally wounded, he was carried to Cleopatra's mausoleum, where, according to ancient accounts, he died in her arms. Days later, Octavian captured Alexandria. Cleopatra understood what awaited her. She would be taken to Rome, displayed in a triumphal procession, and remembered not as a queen, but as a conquered prize. She refused. According to the traditional account recorded by ancient historians, Cleopatra died on August 10th or 12th, 30 BC, possibly from the bite of an Egyptian cobra, known as an asp. However, modern historians note that the exact cause of her death remains uncertain. Some suggest poison may have been used instead. She was only 39 years old. With Cleopatra's death, the Ptolemaic Dynasty came to an end. Egypt was annexed by Rome and became one of Octavian's richest provinces. After nearly 3,000 years of rule by native pharaohs and their successors, independent ancient Egypt had fallen forever. For centuries, Cleopatra was remembered only as a temptress. Modern historians paint a far more complex picture. She was a multilingual ruler, a skilled diplomat, an accomplished strategist, and one of the ancient world's most capable political leaders.
She could not stop Rome's rise, but until her final breath, she fought to preserve the independence of her kingdom. Cleopatra lost the last war, yet more than 2,000 years later, the world still remembers her name. For more amazing information, subscribe the channel.